In this video we're going to take a look at modern Land Rovers and hill descent control. We've previously looked at terrain response generally of modern Land Rovers, so please review that video if you'd like an in-depth explanation of adaptive terrain systems. So let's start by defining what tools we've got available. That starts with low range gearing, so any steep descent, low range gearing, usually first, second or third low. On top of that, Land Rover pioneered something called HDC or hill descent control. That's an electronic system which maintains the vehicle at a set speed by braking all four wheels individually. You can override the speed by using the accelerator or pressing the brake, then you release those pedals and it returns to the original speed. Land Rover also have GAC, which is gradient acceleration control. That's effectively stopping the vehicle running away at high speed down a hill. It also has GRC or gradient release control. That's when you start down a hill, it smoothly releases the brakes to let you get up to your target speed, as opposed to letting you get to your target speed then slamming on those HDC brakes. The first test we did was this rutted descent, put the vehicles into first gear low range and used rock crawl to lock up the centre diff. Now we just let them run away down to hill to see what would happen, and sure enough GAC or gradient acceleration control came in. You can see it applying the brakes as the vehicles go down the hill. The drivers aren't doing that. That is GAC coming in there going, whoa, this is going a bit fast. Now that's good from a safety point of view, but if you want to have a little bit of speed just to get over some form of spoon drain or something like that, well, GAC could potentially get in the way and prevent you from getting that little bit of extra momentum you need to get past the slippery bit. And of course you shouldn't be going down a hill this fast, we are just doing it for test purposes. Now we've got the vehicles locked into first gear low range with HDC or hill descent engaged to the minimum speed. You can see that each wheel is braked individually and the vehicle comes pretty much almost to a stop, and then it will speed up again as it's cross-axled. The driver has control over this. They can accelerate or brake to remove HDC, and then you take your feet off the pedals, it comes back again, and HDC works in forward and reverse. The big advantage of HDC is that it can individually vary the braking pressure on each of the four wheels, whereas humans can obviously only brake all four wheels at the same time. So if one wheel loses traction, a human has to let all the brakes go, whereas HDC can just release that individual brake. Now the HDC speed is inconsistent. It's quite slow here, as you can see, but wait till the wheels are cross-axled and then the vehicle will speed up right there, and then when the wheels get back and come up to ground, it almost stops to a complete halt. So that's not ideal, but it still does make for a pretty controlled descent. So here's a slow-mo. Note a few things. First, the vehicle's going really slow. Secondly, as that left wheel gets into the air, you'll see it being slightly braked and even allowed a little bit to rotate. Thirdly, once it hits the ground, take a look at the ABS working. Look at that, spin, release, and also the bouncing of the vehicle, slightly destabilising it as the brakes go on and off. Just replay that last bit so you can see the suspension bouncing up and down as the brakes are pulsed. Now we're going to contrast two descents, a nice slow controlled one using HDC, although we could do the same just without HDC applying the brakes, and a rather too fast one. Then we're going to look at the main disadvantage of coming down too fast, and here's the quick one. So here's a split screen. What is the main disadvantage of a faster descent? Can you pick it? So here's the problem. You can see on the faster screenshot the suspension is significantly compressed, so you're far more likely to scrape and damage the car over something, and you're also likely to increase tyre wear and track damage due to the skid, and possibly even lose control or be unable to manoeuvre because you're going so fast. So slow descents are where it's at. Also notice how in the faster clip the wheel bounces, then comes off the ground again about now, and then during that time it's not able to be braked. We're going to set up configurable terrain response now. So what we are going to do is press the terrain response button here, and then we can select it with the rocker, or we can just press whichever one we want, and the configurable terrain response is over here. So we go in there and we're going to configure that, and it's called test at the moment. We're going to rename that into, we're going to call that center lock, because we're going to say the lock should be centered at all point. The powertrain, that's just really throttle responsiveness, so we'll just leave that as normal. Steering, that's electric power steering, leave that as medium, and we want less wheel spin. And then that will be all we need for that, and that's now saved. So we can then, that's the first one, and we can go into custom terrain 2, and we'll make another one. We'll call this CTR and rear lock, and again for this one we'll lock center and rear, powertrain will leave as normal, steering normal, and we're going to go for less wheel spin, and that will save that one. So now we've got our CTR lock with CTR and rear lock, and we're not going to bother with those two. So that's the configurable terrain response. So now we're going to talk about the benefits of cross-axle lockers on descent. So here's my car, first gear, low range, no hill descent control, no lockers. See how quickly it comes down the hill. Now I'm going to do exactly the same again, but I'm going to engage my rear cross-axle differential lock, and again, feet off the pedals, no hill descent control, and I'm coming down slower this time, and that's purely because the car doesn't run away so much when one wheel is in the air. Now let's see how that translates to Land Rovers with configurable terrain response 2. So with CTR2 we should be able to do the same thing, but it actually doesn't work because the CTR doesn't lock the rear axle. As you can see here, it's allowing individual wheels to be braked even though that rear axle should be locked with CTR2. And here's another example with the Discovery 5. So it'd be nice if that rear axle locked proactively. Now the advantage of a locker is that it's proactive. HDC is reactive, it has to wait for the vehicle to speed up, then it applies the brake, whereas the locker stops it running away in the first place. So both have got their places. It's just a shame that CTR2 doesn't fully lock the system. So here is an example of CTR2 again, should have that wheel lock, but you can see there that individual wheels are still allowed to rotate at different speeds on the rear axle. Now older Land Rovers had a problem. This is a 2017 Discovery 5 and you can see that we have parked it on a hill. It is in neutral and we're going to then apply the park brake, and that should lock all four wheels, but as you can see it only locks the rear wheels, allowing the vehicle to slide down the slope. This is not behaviour that you want. Here I've replicated the effect in my part-time four-wheel drive Ranger by applying the park brake in two-wheel drive, so that locks just the rear wheels, allowing the fronts to slide. So we decided to see if things had changed, and happily enough they have. So we put both the Discovery and the Defender onto a steep hill, into neutral, park brake on, foot off brake pedal, and it did hold on the hill. Obviously you shouldn't just sit there in neutral, you should put the shifter back into park and chock the vehicle, but for test purposes it worked, unlike the earlier model Discovery, so good news. So to summarise, if you want to come down a hill, first thing to do is select low range and then a low gear, usually first, second or third, and then modulate the brakes. When you're doing that, it's probably a good idea to select rock crawl or TR2 centre lock, because then that way the car will try and synchronise front and rear axle speeds, which is what you want coming down a hill. Hill descent control is very effective in Land Rovers and can be speed varied. It does default in certain terrain response modes. Remember, you can override it by accelerator or brake. I use it mostly for slippery descents. Do remember that the speed will be inconsistent though, and that might get in the way of what you're trying to do with your descent. You can now park on hills, stop, neutral, park brake on, and then once it's settled on the park brake, shift into park. And ideally also remember, chock the wheels certainly if you're going to get out of the car. The rear lock in CTR2 does not permanently lock that rear axle, so it makes no difference for descents, which is a shame. And GAC may override the speed by applying brakes, which is often good, but sometimes if you want to let the car run away a little bit, then that can have a negative effect. Hope you found this video useful. Any questions, please use the comment section, and thanks for watching.